Some people wonder why I live the way I do. The truth is, I learned early on that power doesn't come from showing off. It comes from silence, patience, and knowledge others don't possess. My name is Selena Veron. I'm 62 years old, and my modest appearance hides much more than my daughter-in-law could ever imagine. 35 years ago, when my late husband Richard and I started investing in Silicon Valley properties, nobody believed those empty lots would be worth anything. We were young, ambitious, and could see what others couldn't. Richard's engineering mind paired perfectly with my business instincts. While our friends were buying fancy cars and taking exotic vacations, we lived frugally in a small ranch house and poured everything into those investments. When Richard died suddenly 12 years ago, I was devastated. We had built an empire together, turning our initial investments into a fortune that now sits at just over $60 million. But I never changed my lifestyle. Our son Raphael was already in college, and I stayed in the same modest home in Palo Alto where we'd lived for decades. The neighbors think I'm just another widow living on a pension and careful savings. That's exactly how I want it. I maintain a small circle of trusted financial advisors and attorneys who handle my affairs. No one else knows. Not my bridge club friends, not the ladies at my community garden, and certainly not my son or his wife of 3 years, Isadora. Raphael met Isadora at a charity gala in San Francisco. He had followed somewhat in his father's footsteps, becoming a software developer for a mid-sized tech company. Not wealthy by Silicon Valley standards, but comfortable. Isadora worked in public relations for the firm organizing the gala. She was 15 years younger than him, strikingly beautiful, with ambition radiating from her every movement. I saw through her immediately. The way her eyes catalogued the room, assessing who was worth her time, the calculated warmth of her smile when she was introduced to me as Raphael's mother. I recognized the type. I'd encountered many Isadoras during my years in business. People who mistake kindness for weakness and simplicity for stupidity. "It's so wonderful to finally meet you," she had said that night, giving me a quick hug that felt like an obligation. "Raphael speaks so highly of you. I love your dress. Is it vintage?" It wasn't vintage. It was simply modest. But I smiled and thanked her. I could see my son was smitten, and I've never been one to interfere. Everyone makes their own choices and lives with the consequences. Richard and I had raised Raphael to be independent, though sometimes I wonder if we should have taught him to be more discerning. They married quickly, too quickly. A lavish wedding that Raphael couldn't really afford. I offered to help with a reasonable sum, which he gratefully accepted. Isadora had wanted something more extravagant, I could tell, but she hid her disappointment well. I gave them a modest check as a wedding gift, what would be expected from someone of my apparent means. Over the next 3 years, I watched their marriage from a careful distance. Raphael seemed happy enough, though something in his eyes had changed. A certain tension appeared whenever money was mentioned. Isadora redecorated their home twice, insisted on luxury vacations, and drove a car that cost more than Raphael's annual salary. I never commented, never judged openly. I simply observed. They began visiting me for dinner once a month. Isadora would look around my comfortable but unpretentious home with barely concealed disdain. She'd make comments about updating my kitchen or brightening up my living room. I would smile and thank her for her suggestions. "Mom loves this house because of Dad," Raphael would explain, somewhat apologetically. "It has sentimental value." What it actually had was paid-off value and excellent bones beneath its dated exterior. The property alone was worth over $3 million in today's market, but I had no intention of selling or renovating just to impress someone like Isadora. Last night was our monthly dinner. I had prepared lasagna, Richard's favorite, and a simple salad. Nothing fancy, but hearty and homemade. I noticed Isadora picking at her food, taking tiny bites and moving it around her plate. "Is something wrong with the lasagna, dear?" I asked. "Oh no, it's fine," she said with a tight smile. "I'm just watching my carbs these days. You know how it is, or maybe you don't have to worry about that anymore at your age." Raphael shot her a look, but said nothing. I simply smiled. "Well, more for us then," I said, serving myself another small portion. The conversation drifted to Raphael's work. He mentioned a possible promotion that would require longer hours, but come with a significant raise. Thank goodness. Isadora sighed. We could really use it. The renovation on the master bathroom is costing a fortune. Another renovation? I asked mildly. Didn't you just redo the kitchen last year? Well, yes, but that was necessary. The bathroom is a disaster. It's like something from the 90s. No offense, Selena, but not everyone wants to live surrounded by outdated things. Raphael looked uncomfortable. Isadora, that's enough. What? I'm just being honest. Some people actually care about keeping up appearances. She turned to me with what I'm sure she thought was a kind expression. You know, Selena, you really should consider getting a part-time job or something. It must be so boring sitting in this house all day. Plus, the extra income wouldn't hurt. Social Security only goes so far, right? The room went silent. I took a sip of my water and set the glass down carefully. I keep busy enough, I said quietly. Mom volunteers at the community garden and the library, Raphael said, his voice tight. And she doesn't need extra income. Dad left her well provided for. Isadora laughed. Actually laughed. Well provided for? In this house? Come on, Rafe. Your father was an engineer, not a CEO. She turned to me with false sympathy in her eyes. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with living modestly, but you're still young enough to get out there. Maybe meet someone new. My friend's mother works at Nordstrom's, and she loves the employee discount. I studied her face for a moment. The perfect makeup, the calculated concern, the absolute certainty of her own superiority. That's very thoughtful of you to worry about my finances, Isadora, I said calmly, but I manage just fine. Of course you do, she said with a patronizing smile. I just think, honestly, Isadora, drop it, Raphael interrupted. Mom doesn't need financial advice. Fine, she huffed. I was just trying to help. It's not like I'm suggesting she's a burden or anything. But her tone suggested exactly that. As I cleared the plates, I could hear them arguing in hushed tones in the living room. Raphael defending me, Isadora insisting she was just being practical. When I returned with coffee, the conversation abruptly stopped. Dessert? I offered, placing a homemade apple pie on the table. None for me, Isadora said quickly. And Rafe shouldn't either. He's put on a few pounds lately. Raphael flushed with embarrassment, but declined a slice. I cut a small piece for myself and sat down. I just think, Isadora continued, as if our previous conversation hadn't ended, that it's silly for you to rattle around in this big old house by yourself. You could sell it, move into something more manageable, like one of those nice senior communities, and have a nice nest egg to enjoy your retirement. This house suits me fine, I replied evenly. But think of what you could do with the money. Travel, buy some new clothes. She gestured vaguely at my simple cardigan and slacks. No offense, but you could use a little updating yourself. Isadora, Raphael's voice was sharp now. That's completely out of line. What? I'm just being honest. You're always saying I should be more honest. She turned back to me. Selena, you can't just keep living in the past. Richard has been gone for what, 10 years now? You need to move on, create a new life for yourself. And let's be real, this house is too much for someone your age to maintain. I set my fork down and looked at her directly. I appreciate your concern, Isadora, but my life and my finances are my business. She rolled her eyes slightly. Fine. Keep playing the martyr if that makes you happy. I just think it's sad that you're not making the most of the time you have left. The time I have left, I repeated softly. You know what I mean. You're not getting any younger. Raphael stood up suddenly. I think we should go. It's getting late. It's barely 8 o'clock, Isadora protested. Nevertheless, he said firmly. Mom, thank you for dinner. I'm sorry about this. I walked them to the door, accepting Raphael's apologetic hug and Isadora's air kiss near my cheek. Think about what I said, she whispered, patting my arm condescendingly. Life's too short to keep playing small. Although, she glanced around my modest entryway with its dated wallpaper. I suppose at some point, it's too late to change. As I closed the door behind them, I heard her final comment, clearly not meant for my ears, but not particularly concealed either. Honestly, Rafe, I don't know why you insist on these dinners. She's just going to guilt you into taking care of her eventually. We should be saving for our future, not worrying about your mother's poor financial planning. I stood in my entryway for a long moment after they left. Not angry exactly, but contemplative. I had spent decades cultivating this image of modest widowhood. It had served me well, allowing me to move through the world without the complications that come with visible wealth. It had protected Raphael from becoming entitled or targeted. It had given me peace and privacy. But now I wondered if I had made a mistake. My son had married a woman who valued only appearances and status, who saw my simple lifestyle as failure rather than choice, who looked at me, a woman who had built a fortune through intelligence and patience, and saw only an aging burden to be managed. I walked to my study, the one room in the house that reflected my true tastes. Rich walnut bookshelves, a handcrafted desk, and a small safe hidden behind an unremarkable landscape painting. I unlocked the safe and removed a leather portfolio containing documents rarely seen by anyone but myself and my most trusted advisors. Asset holdings, investment portfolios, real estate deeds, a fortune hidden in plain sight. I sat at my desk and began to make notes. Quiet, careful notes about things I would need to verify, about the true nature of my daughter-in-law's finances, background, and activities, about the best way to protect my son while teaching Isadora a lesson she would never forget. Some people mistake kindness for weakness. Some people look at a simple house and simple clothes and assume there's nothing of value beneath. Some people mock what they don't understand and demean what they can't possess. Isadora had made the grave mistake of underestimating me, of treating me like I was invisible, irrelevant, of assuming that my age and my modest appearance meant I had no power. She would learn differently, not out of vengeance. I've never been one for petty revenge, but out of necessity, because I could now see clearly that she was not merely rude or status-obsessed, but dangerous to my son's future and well-being. Tomorrow, I would begin making calls, discreet inquiries, careful arrangements. The pieces would be set in motion, and Isadora would never see it coming. After all, I'm just a simple widow. What harm could I possibly do? I've always believed that information is the most valuable currency. Before taking action, you must know exactly what you're dealing with. So the morning after that dinner, I began my investigation into Isadora Menk. My first call was to Martin Chen, my attorney for the past 20 years, one of the few people who knows the full extent of my finances. "Selena, what a pleasant surprise," he said. "Everything all right with the Henderson property acquisition?" "That's proceeding fine, Martin. I'm calling about a personal matter." I explained the situation with Isadora, careful to stick to facts rather than emotions. "I need a complete background check. Financials, employment history, education, family, connections, credit reports, everything." "May I ask why?" Martin's voice held no judgment, only professional curiosity. "My daughter-in-law seems to be living well beyond my son's means. I suspect she's either in significant debt or has income sources Raphael doesn't know about. Given some concerning behavior, I need to understand what we're dealing with. I'll put Diane on it immediately. She's our best investigator, discreet and thorough." "Thank you, Martin. One more thing, I may need to make some adjustments to my asset management in the coming weeks. Nothing drastic, just some strategic reallocations." "Of course. Just let me know what you need." Next, I called Helen Baxter, my oldest friend and the only person outside my professional circle who knows about my wealth. Helen and I met in college, long before Richard and the Silicon Valley investments. She's a retired investigative journalist with connections throughout California. "Isadora Menk," Helen mused after I explained the situation. "The name sounds vaguely familiar. Let me make some calls." While waiting for information, I kept to my normal routine. Tuesday morning gardening at the community plots, afternoon bridge club at the senior center. To all outward appearances, I was just Selena Varon, unassuming widow and retiree. 3 days later, Diane's preliminary report arrived via secure email. I reviewed it in my study, a cup of chamomile tea growing cold beside my keyboard. Isadora Menk, born Isadora Pearson in Sacramento, 34 years old. BA in Communications from Sacramento State. Series of PR jobs across Northern California, never staying more than 2 years at any firm. Credit score of 580, 3 maxed-out credit cards, a luxury car lease costing $850 monthly, student loans in forbearance, no savings account, no investments. Most interesting was a pattern of increasingly expensive lifestyles with each relationship. Before Raphael, she'd been engaged to the son of a winery owner in Napa. Before that, a brief marriage to a real estate developer that ended mysteriously. Helen called that evening with her findings. "Your instincts were right, Selena. Your daughter-in-law has quite a reputation in certain circles. She was fired from Wilson PR in San Francisco for expense account irregularities. Nothing prosecuted, but widely known. And that marriage to the real estate developer ended when his company discovered funds missing from their accounts. Do you think Raphael knows any of this?" "Doubtful. She's careful to keep her past compartmentalized. New city, new name. She started using her maternal grandmother's surname after the divorce. New social circle." I thanked Helen and promised to keep her updated. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my son, how genuinely good-hearted he was, how trusting, just like his father. The next day, I received a text from Raphael. "Mom, I'm sorry about Isadora's behavior. She's been stressed about finances lately." I told her she was completely out of line. I replied simply, "No apology necessary. Everything okay with you two?" "Working through some stuff. She wants to renovate again. I'm trying to explain we need to budget better." That afternoon, I made an appointment with Jerome Wallace, a private investigator recommended by Martin. I needed more than background information now. I needed to understand Isadora's current activities. Jerome was in his 60s, a former police detective with kind eyes and a methodical mind. I explained the situation, showing him the reports from Diane and Helen. "So you want surveillance?" he asked, taking notes. "Limited and legal," I clarified. "I need to know where she goes when my son is at work, who she meets with, and any financial activities he might not be aware of." "May I ask your ultimate goal here, Mrs. Varon?" I considered my answer carefully. "Protection. My son married someone who appears to be hiding significant financial issues and possibly a history of fraud. I need to know exactly what he's facing." Jerome nodded. "I understand. We'll be discreet, but thorough." 2 weeks passed. I maintained my routine, including the monthly dinner with Raphael and Isadora, which was notably strained. Isadora was on her best behavior, almost suspiciously so. Raphael seemed tired, with new worry lines around his eyes. Jerome's reports started arriving via encrypted email. Photographs, meeting transcripts, financial transactions. The picture they painted was worse than I'd anticipated. Isadora wasn't just financially irresponsible. She was actively deceptive. She had a separate bank account Raphael didn't know about. She met regularly with a man named Victor Delgado, an investment advisor with a questionable reputation. She had recently applied for a loan in Raphael's name, forging his signature on the documents. Most damning was the evidence that she was planning to leave. Jerome had photographed her viewing apartments in Los Angeles. She had opened a separate safety deposit box at a bank across town, and there were several large cash withdrawals from their joint account, always just under the $10,000 reporting threshold. I called Martin immediately. "I need to move up our timeline. Can you come to my house this evening?" Martin arrived at 6, briefcase in hand. We sat in my study, surrounded by the evidence of Isadora's duplicity. "She's planning to clean him out," I said simply, "possibly within weeks." Martin reviewed Jerome's reports with professional detachment. "This is substantial evidence of financial fraud, identity theft, and possibly wire fraud if she's moving money electronically under false pretenses. We could take this to the authorities." "Not yet," I said. "Raphael loves her, despite everything. I need to give him a chance to see the truth for himself first." "What are you proposing?" I laid out my plan. Martin listened, occasionally making notes or asking clarifying questions. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment. "It's unorthodox," he finally said, "but legal, if carefully executed. You're sure this is how you want to proceed?" "I'm sure." The next morning, I began implementing Phase 1. First, I called Victor Delgado's office using a voice modulator and identified myself as a potential client, referred by Isadora Menk. His receptionist immediately scheduled a consultation for the following day. Then I contacted the property management company that handled Raphael and Isadora's apartment building. Using one of my investment LLCs, I made an offer to purchase the entire complex. The offer was generous enough that the owners accepted immediately. Next, I called Raphael at work. "I'd like to have lunch with you today, just the two of us." We met at a quiet cafe near his office. He looked exhausted. "Mom, if this is about Isadora's behavior at dinner—" "It's not," I interrupted gently. "This is about you. You don't seem happy, Raphael." He stared down at his untouched sandwich. "Things are complicated right now." "Money problems?" He nodded reluctantly. "I don't understand it. I make good money, but we're always stretched thin. Isadora says it's just temporary, that her new PR client is going to pay a huge retainer soon." "What new client?" "Some investment group. She says they're very exclusive, very private. Victor Delgado's investment group, no doubt." I took a deep breath. "Raphael, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you years ago." For the first time in 12 years, I revealed the truth about my finances to someone new. I explained about the Silicon Valley investments, the property holdings, the careful wealth management that had built my fortune to over $60 million. Raphael stared at me in shock. But the house, your clothes, why would you hide this? Your father and I always wanted you to value work and character over money. We were afraid that too much wealth too early would change your path in life." I reached across the table to take his hand. "Maybe that was a mistake. Maybe if you'd known, you wouldn't have felt so much pressure to maintain the lifestyle Isadora expects." "Does she know? Did you tell her?" "No, and I'd like to keep it that way for now." He looked confused. "Why?" I chose my next words carefully. "I have reason to believe Isadora married you for financial reasons, and that she's not being honest about her own finances or intentions." His face hardened. "What are you saying? That my wife is some kind of gold digger?" "Mom, that's unfair. You've never given her a chance." "I have evidence, Raphael. Substantial evidence." "What kind of evidence? Have you been spying on my wife?" His voice rose slightly, drawing glances from nearby tables. "Not spying. Investigating. There's a difference." I opened my purse and removed a thin folder. "This contains only the most important findings. Bank statements, loan applications in your name that you never signed, photographs of meetings you don't know about." He stared at the folder like it might bite him. "I don't want to see that." "You need to, because in 3 days, Isadora is planning to empty your joint accounts and disappear. She's already found an apartment in Los Angeles under her maiden name." "This is crazy," he whispered. But he took the folder. "Take it home, look through it carefully, then call me, anytime, day or night." He stood up abruptly. "I can't believe you did this. Investigating my wife behind my back, making these accusations. I know you're angry, but please, look at the evidence before you dismiss it." He left without another word, the folder clutched in his hand. I spent the next day finalizing arrangements. The purchase of Raphael's apartment building was completed. Victor Delgado arrived for his consultation with a potential client, only to find himself meeting with representatives from the Securities and Exchange Commission instead, an anonymous tip having alerted them to certain irregularities in his investment practices. By evening, I was sitting in my study, waiting. The grandfather clock in the hallway had just struck 9 when my phone rang. "She denied everything," Raphael said without preamble, his voice hollow. Said the bank statements were fake. The photos meant nothing, that she'd never applied for those loans. "And you believe her?" A long pause. I didn't know what to believe. So I called the bank, used her phone while she was in the shower. "Her passcode is my birthday." His voice cracked. "The separate account exists, Mom, with almost $80,000 in it. Money I can't account for." "I'm so sorry, Raphael." When I confronted her, she broke down. Said she was saving it as a surprise for me, a special vacation. But then I asked about the apartment in LA. She completely lost it, started screaming that I'd ruined everything, that she deserved better than a mediocre programmer with a penny-pinching mother. He gave a bitter laugh. Her exact words. "Where are you now?" "Outside our building. I couldn't stay there with her." "Come here. You can stay with me as long as you need." "Thanks, Mom. I'll be there in 20 minutes. After we hung up, I made one more call to the property management company I now owned. "This is Selena Veron. I'd like to issue an eviction notice to apartment 3B, effective immediately. The tenant has violated multiple lease terms, including subletting without permission and unauthorized alterations to the property. That's unusually swift, Mrs. Varon. The standard process. I understand the standard process. I'm willing to compensate the tenants for the inconvenience with 2 months' rent. But I want them out by the end of the week. Yes, ma'am. We'll deliver the notice first thing tomorrow. As I put down the phone, I felt no satisfaction, only resolve. Isadora had sought to harm my son financially and emotionally. She had mocked me, belittled me, and suggested I was a burden, all while plotting her own schemes. This was only the beginning of her education. By the time I was finished, Isadora Menk would understand exactly what it meant to underestimate Selena Varon. Raphael moved into my guest room that night, bringing only a suitcase of clothes and his laptop. He looked like a shell-shocked soldier moving mechanically through the motions of unpacking. "The eviction notice isn't necessary, Mom," he said, sitting heavily on the edge of the bed. "I can just move out. The lease is in both our names. It's not about the apartment, Raphael. It's about consequences." He looked up at me, confusion in his red-rimmed eyes. "What do you mean?" "Isadora needs to understand that actions have repercussions. This is just the beginning." "Beginning of what?" His voice held a note of alarm. "Mom, I appreciate everything you've done to expose the truth, but I just want to divorce her and move on with my life." I sat beside him on the bed, taking his hand in mine. "Of course you do, and you will. But there's more you don't know yet." I explained about Victor Delgado's investment scheme, how Isadora had been funneling money to him, likely including funds from Raphael's accounts, how the SEC was now investigating both of them. She could face criminal charges, I concluded. Raphael looked stunned. I knew she was materialistic, but a criminal. People show you who they are eventually. The only question is whether you're paying attention. He was quiet for a long moment. "I feel like such a fool." "You're not a fool. You're trusting, like your father was. It's a virtue, not a flaw." I squeezed his hand. "Now get some rest. Tomorrow will be a difficult day." That night, I received a series of increasingly frantic texts from Isadora. "Where is Raphael? He's not answering his phone. Did he come to your house? Tell him to call me now. This is all a misunderstanding. Those bank accounts are for our future." "What did you say to him?" "You've always hated me." "We just got an eviction notice? This is insane. Who does that?" "Answer me, Selena. I know you're behind this." I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I forwarded the messages to Jerome, who added them to his growing file of evidence. The next morning, I made breakfast while Raphael called in sick to work. We were sitting at the kitchen table when his phone began ringing incessantly. "Isadora." "You should answer it," I said. "Put it on speaker." He hesitated, then nodded and pressed the button. "Hello, Isadora. Where the hell are you?" Her voice was shrill, panicked. "I woke up and you were gone. And now there's an eviction notice saying we have to be out by Friday. What is going on?" "I know about the account, Isadora, and the apartment in LA and Victor Delgado." A long pause. "Baby, I can explain all of that. Victor is just a financial advisor. I was trying to surprise you." "Stop lying," Raphael said quietly. "It's over." "Over? What are you talking about? You can't just end our marriage over a misunderstanding. And what about our home? They can't just evict us." "Actually, they can," I interjected. "The building has a new owner." "Selena?" Isadora's voice turned venomous. "You're behind this, aren't you? You've never accepted me. You've always been jealous that Raphael has a life beyond you." "The building was purchased by Varon Holdings LLC," I said calmly. "A company I established 30 years ago." "What? What are you talking about?" "I own your building now, Isadora. And according to your lease agreement, subletting and unauthorized renovations are grounds for immediate eviction." "This is insane. You can't do this. I'll sue you both." "With what money?" Raphael asked. "The money you stole from our accounts? Or the money you've been giving to Victor Delgado, who, by the way, is now under investigation by the SEC?" The line went silent for several seconds. When Isadora spoke again, her voice was lower, calculating. "Let's all calm down. We can work this out. Raphael, come home. We'll talk like adults." "I am home," Raphael replied. My mother's house is the only place I've felt safe in years. Your mother, Isadora spat the word. That lonely old woman living in the past? She's manipulating you, can't you see that? She's turning you against me because she has nothing else in her life. I watched Raphael's expression harden. Don't talk about my mother that way. Why not? It's the truth. She's a pathetic widow who can't let go of her dead husband. She lives in that outdated house, wears those frumpy clothes, and judges everyone else because she failed at life. And now she's trying to destroy our marriage out of spite. You're wrong about her, Raphael said. About everything. Please, Isadora's voice turned pleading. Come home. I love you. Whatever your mother has told you. Goodbye, Isadora. Raphael ended the call. We sat in silence for a moment. Then he looked up at me, determination replacing the hurt in his eyes. What's the next step in your plan? Are you sure you want to know? He nodded. She tried to ruin my life. She insulted my mother. She stole from me. Yes, I want to know. I outlined the next phases of my strategy. Raphael listened, occasionally asking questions or suggesting refinements. By noon, we had a clear path forward. First, Raphael would file for divorce, citing financial fraud and abandonment. Martin had already prepared the paperwork. With the evidence we'd gathered, the court would likely freeze Isadora's assets during proceedings. Second, I would contact Isadora's employer, a mid-sized PR firm where she'd been working for the past year, with evidence of her involvement in Victor Delgado's investment scheme. Given that she had been meeting him during business hours and using company resources to communicate with him, they would have grounds for termination. Third, Jerome would continue monitoring her activities, especially any attempts to access new credit or financial accounts in Raphael's name. She'll be desperate, I warned Raphael. She might try to contact your friends, your colleagues, even your boss. She'll paint me as a controlling mother and you as weak for listening to me. Let her try, he said grimly. I have the evidence, and I'm done being manipulated. The next 48 hours unfolded exactly as we'd anticipated. Isadora called Raphael's friends, spinning a tale of mental instability and maternal interference. She showed up at his workplace, causing such a scene that security had to escort her out. She even attempted to access their joint safety deposit box, only to discover that Raphael had already emptied it. By Friday morning, she had been served with divorce papers and fired from her job. The eviction was proceeding, and her credit cards had been frozen due to the pending investigation into Victor Delgado's activities. That afternoon, she appeared on my doorstep. I watched through the security camera as she pounded on the door, mascara streaking down her face. I know you're in there, Selena, she shouted. Open this door. You've ruined everything. You and your pathetic son. I opened the door slowly, standing in the threshold. Hello, Isadora. She tried to push past me, but I held firm. Where is he? Raphael! Raphael! Come out here and face me! Raphael isn't here, I said calmly. He's meeting with the district attorney about the forged loan applications. She stepped back, eyes wild. You're bluffing. They can't prove anything. Your signature is on the applications, Isadora. Your fingerprints, your IP address. Even if Raphael wanted to protect you, which he doesn't, the evidence is overwhelming. This is all your fault, she hissed. You turned him against me. You couldn't stand to see him happy with someone else. Happy? I raised an eyebrow. Was he happy when you belittled him about his weight? When you drained his bank accounts? When you mocked his mother at her own dinner table? Oh, please, she sneered. Like any of that matters. You're just jealous because I'm young and beautiful and have a real life, while you're just a lonely old widow with nothing but this dump of a house. I smiled then, a genuine smile that seemed to unnerve her more than anger would have. That dump is worth over $3 million, Isadora, and I own it outright, along with 16 other properties across Northern California. Her expression faltered. What? My dead husband and I built a real estate empire before you were even born. I'm worth over $60 million. I live simply by choice, not necessity. She stared at me, disbelief giving way to horrified understanding. You're lying. Am I? How do you think I bought your apartment building on a day's notice? How do you think I convinced the SEC to fast-track their investigation into Victor Delgado? That was you? She whispered. That was me. The lonely old widow you so thoroughly underestimated, her face contorted with rage. You bitch! You let everyone think that I was a helpless old woman you could disrespect and dismiss? Yes, I did. And you revealed exactly who you are in response. I stepped closer to her. Here's what happens now, Isadora. You will leave my property immediately. You will sign the divorce papers without contest. You will disappear from Raphael's life completely. Because if you don't, I will make sure that every employer, every landlord, and every potential partner in your future knows exactly what kind of person you are. You can't do that. I already have. Check your credit report. Check your rental history. Check the background search that comes up when employers Google your name. It's all there. Not lies, just the documented truth of your actions. She lunged at me suddenly, hands outstretched like claws. I stepped aside easily, watching as she stumbled past me onto the porch. Assaulting a senior citizen? I tisked. That won't look good on top of everything else. She froze, breathing heavily. This isn't over. It is for you. I gestured to the street, where a police car had just pulled up. Officer Reynolds is here to escort you from the property. There's a restraining order prohibiting you from coming within 100 yards of this house or Raphael's workplace. As the officer approached, Isadora's demeanor changed instantly. Her shoulders slumped, tears welled in her eyes, and she adopted a tremulous voice. Officer, please. This woman is lying about me. I'm just trying to see my husband. Save the performance, Officer Reynolds said, unmoved. I've reviewed the evidence, Mrs. Menck. Now please come with me. I watched as she was escorted to the police car, her venomous glare never leaving my face. Only when they had driven away did I close my door and lock it. That evening, Raphael came home from his meeting with the DA, looking exhausted, but relieved. They're proceeding with charges, he said, dropping onto the sofa. Identity theft, wire fraud, and forgery to start. They think there might be more victims before me. How do you feel? I asked, handing him a cup of tea. He considered the question. Angry, embarrassed, but also lighter, like I can breathe again. He looked up at me. The DA mentioned that you've been instrumental in building the case against Victor Delgado. I had some information that proved useful. Mom, he set down his cup, I'm starting to think there's a lot I don't know about you. I smiled. Perhaps it's time for that to change. Over the next few days, I showed Raphael the true extent of my business empire. The properties across California, Oregon, and Washington. The investment portfolios. The charitable foundation I'd established in Richard's name. All these years, he marveled, you've been running this from your little study in that outdated house. Location is irrelevant in the digital age, and I prefer to work without ostentation. But why hide it from me? Did you think I'd, what? Become spoiled? Squander it? No. I sat across from him in my study. Initially, your father and I wanted you to develop your own path, free from the expectations that come with visible wealth. After he died, I suppose I became protective of our privacy. The world treats wealthy widows differently, especially those without financial experience. I didn't want to spend my life fending off advisors and fortune hunters. Like Isadora, he said quietly. Like Isadora, I agreed, though I never anticipated someone like her targeting you. He was silent for a moment. What happens to her now? That depends partly on the courts. But regardless of legal consequences, she'll find it difficult to rebuild. Her professional reputation is damaged. Her credit is ruined. Her pattern of behavior is documented and publicly available. You've been thorough, he observed. She threatened my son, I said simply. There are consequences for that. Raphael stayed with me for 3 more weeks while finalizing the divorce and finding a new apartment, one in a building I didn't own, at his insistence. I need to stand on my own, he explained, but maybe with a little more wisdom this time. On the morning he moved out, we stood in my driveway beside his packed car. Will you be okay here alone? He asked, concern in his eyes. I laughed. I've been okay here for 12 years, Raphael, but I appreciate the concern. I just keep thinking about what Isadora said, about you living in the past, hanging on to Dad's memory. I treasure your father's memory, I corrected. That's different from living in the past. I've built a life that satisfies me, one where I control my time, my resources, and my relationships. He hugged me tightly. I'm sorry I didn't see her for what she was sooner. We all have blind spots when it comes to love. The important thing is that you see clearly now. As Raphael drove away, I returned to my modest home with its outdated decor and frumpy furnishings. To the life I had carefully constructed, balancing privacy with purpose, simplicity with power. I poured myself a cup of coffee and opened my laptop to check the morning's financial reports. The news alert appeared in my email. Investment advisor Victor Delgado arrested in Ponzi scheme investigation. Attached was a journalist's inquiry. Sources indicate you were instrumental in exposing this fraud. Would you be willing to provide a statement or interview? I smiled to myself as I began to type a response. Perhaps it was time for Selena Veron to step out of the shadows, just a little. After all, there was a certain satisfaction in being seen for who you truly are, especially after being so thoroughly underestimated. 6 months have passed since that confrontation on my doorstep. Much has changed, both visibly and beneath the surface. The criminal case against Victor Delgado concluded with a 15-year prison sentence for running a Ponzi scheme that defrauded dozens of investors out of millions. Isadora, while not charged as a co-conspirator, faced her own legal consequences. 2 years of probation and restitution payments for the identity theft and fraud committed against Raphael. I did eventually speak with that journalist, Sarah Keller from the San Francisco Chronicle. Our conversation was meant to focus on the investment fraud, but as we talked, Sarah became more interested in my story. "Let me get this straight," she said, leaning forward across my kitchen table. "You've been quietly running a multi-million-dollar real estate empire from this modest home for decades, and no one knew?" "My attorneys knew, my accountants, a few business associates, the people who needed to know. But not your neighbors, not your friends. Not even your son until recently." I poured more tea into her cup. "I've never seen the value in broadcasting my financial status. Until your daughter-in-law pushed you too far," Sarah observed with a smile. "Let's say I recognized a situation that required correction." Sarah's article, "The Silicon Valley Stealth Millionaire," ran in the Sunday business section. It detailed my journey from young investor to hidden tycoon, touching lightly on the Delgado case and Isadora's fraud. The piece was respectful, even admiring of my approach to wealth and privacy. I expected it to create some ripples in my quiet life. I didn't expect the flood that followed. The morning after publication, my phone began ringing at 7 a.m. Old business associates, distant acquaintances, even my bridge club friends. "Selena!" exclaimed Dorothy, my partner at Tuesday Bridge for 6 years. "Why didn't you ever say anything? All those times we treated you to lunch because we thought you were on a fixed income." "The lunches were lovely," I replied, "and I've anonymously funded the senior center's renovation. It seemed a fair exchange." The local news picked up the story, then national outlets. "Underestimated Widow Gets Revenge" was a particularly sensationalist headline from one tabloid. I declined all requests for interviews, but the story spread nonetheless, embellished with each retelling. Raphael called, concerned. "Are you handling the attention okay? I could come stay with you for a while." "I'm fine," I assured him. "People will lose interest soon enough." But they didn't. Not entirely. The narrative was too compelling. The unassuming widow with secret millions. The scheming daughter-in-law who underestimated her. It sparked conversations about women and wealth, aging and invisibility, revenge and justice. Then came the call from Elaine Winters at Visionary Productions. "Mrs. Varon, we'd like to discuss the possibility of a documentary about your experience. Not sensationalized, a thoughtful exploration of financial empowerment, ageism, and the consequences of underestimating women, especially older women." My initial instinct was to decline. I'd never sought the spotlight. But as Elaine outlined her vision, I found myself reconsidering. Perhaps there was value in sharing this story, not for personal vindication, but for the broader message. "I'll think about it," I told her. That evening, I received an unexpected text from a number I didn't recognize. "Enjoying your 15 minutes of fame, Selena? Don't worry. The truth always comes out eventually. Isadora." I blocked the number immediately and forwarded the message to Jerome, who had maintained a monitoring brief on her activities. His report came back the next day. Isadora had moved to Phoenix after completing her community service. She'd found work at a small marketing firm under her maiden name, Pearson, but was struggling financially with the restitution payments and damaged credit history. The text had come from a burner phone purchased with cash. "Should we be concerned?" Jerome asked. "No," I decided. "She's attempting to salvage her pride. Nothing more." But the text did clarify something for me. I called Elaine Winters back. "I'll participate in your documentary on one condition. It must be honest about consequences. Actions have repercussions. Choices create ripples that can't always be contained." "Absolutely," she agreed. "That's central to the story." Filming began the following month. It was strange having cameras in my home, bright lights illuminating corners that had remained comfortably shadowed for years. The crew was respectful but thorough, documenting my daily routine, my workspace, my methodical approach to business. Raphael participated reluctantly, still uncomfortable with publicity but understanding my reasons for proceeding. "Just be prepared," he warned. "Isadora will see this. She'll try to retaliate somehow." "Let her," I said simply. "Every action she takes only reinforces the truth about her character." The documentary, titled Hidden Fortune, premiered at a small film festival in San Francisco 6 months later. I attended the screening with Raphael, Helen, and Martin, my small circle of trusted confidants. The theater was surprisingly full, the audience engaged and responsive. The film was more nuanced than I'd expected. Yes, it told the story of Isadora's deception and my response, but it placed that narrative within a broader context. How society often renders older women invisible. How that invisibility can become a form of power when wielded deliberately. How the patience and perspective that come with age can be formidable assets. After the credits rolled, the audience applauded enthusiastically. A short Q&A followed, during which a young woman in the back row raised her hand. "Mrs. Varon, do you regret any of your actions toward your former daughter-in-law? Some might say your response was disproportionate to her offense." I considered the question carefully. I don't believe in revenge for its own sake. What I did was protect my son from someone who was systematically deceiving and defrauding him. Was I thorough? Yes. Disproportionate? No. Every consequence Isadora faced was directly tied to her own actions and choices. The documentary aired nationally the following month on a major streaming platform. The response was immediate and polarizing. Some viewers praised my strategic thinking and protective instincts. Others criticized what they saw as an excessive response to familial conflict. Social media buzzed with debates about wealth, age, gender, and justice. Through it all, I maintained my routine. Community garden on Tuesdays, bridge club on Thursdays, weekly dinners with Raphael, who had started dating again, more cautiously this time. "She seems nice," I commented after meeting Leanne, a software engineer from his company. "Grounded." "She is," Raphael agreed, "and she doesn't care about money or status. She actually suggested our third date be volunteering at a homeless shelter." I smiled. A good sign. "I told her everything about you, by the way. No secrets this time." A wise approach. 3 weeks after the documentary's release, I received a certified letter from a law firm in Phoenix representing Isadora Pearson, formerly Menk. It claimed defamation, invasion of privacy, and intentional infliction of emotional distress, demanding $2 million in damages. I forwarded it to Martin, who called within the hour, barely containing his amusement. "This is frivolous on every level," he assured me. Nothing in the documentary was untrue. Her criminal record is public. Information. The documentary producers obtained all necessary releases. And given her documented behavior, any emotional distress would be difficult to attribute solely to the film. So we fight it? We don't even dignify it with a fight. We file for immediate dismissal and counter for legal fees. This is a desperate attempt at extortion, nothing more. He was right. The case was dismissed 3 weeks later, with Isadora ordered to pay our legal costs. She couldn't, of course. Her financial situation had only worsened since the documentary aired. Her Phoenix employer had seen it and terminated her employment, citing concerns about company reputation. Jerome's final report on her indicated she'd moved again, this time to a small town in New Mexico, working as a waitress under yet another variation of her name. The documentary had made her recognizable enough that reinvention had become significantly more difficult. I felt no satisfaction in this news, only a sense of completed consequences, the natural conclusion of a chain of events she had set in motion herself. The documentary's success led to unexpected opportunities. I was invited to speak at women's business conferences, financial literacy workshops, and senior advocacy events. After careful consideration, I accepted a few of these invitations, focusing on events where my experience might genuinely help others. Standing at a podium before the Women's Investment Network of Northern California, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. Financial independence isn't about wealth for its own sake, I told the audience of women ranging from college age to retirement. It's about the freedom to make choices on your own terms, to walk away from what doesn't serve you, to stand firm when challenged, to protect what matters. Did you always plan to reveal your wealth eventually? Asked a woman in her 70s during the Q&A. No, I admitted. For decades, I was content with privacy. There's power in being underestimated, in having people dismiss you as irrelevant because of your age or gender or appearance. It allows you to observe, to maneuver, to act without scrutiny. Then why change that? She pressed. I considered my answer carefully. Because sometimes there's greater value in being seen, in showing others, especially younger women, that age doesn't diminish your capacity or your worth. That being underestimated can be useful, but should never be internalized. After the event, as I was gathering my things, a young woman approached me hesitantly. Mrs. Varon, I just wanted to say thank you. My grandmother raised me after my parents died, and she faced so much of what you described, being dismissed, talked down to, treated as if her age made her irrelevant. She passed away last year, but watching your documentary helped me understand her experience better. I squeezed her hand. I'm sure she appreciated having you in her corner. I hope so. I just wish... She trailed off. What do you wish, dear? I wish she could have had her moment like you did. Her chance to show everyone who underestimated her exactly what she was capable of. I smiled. Perhaps she did, in her own way. Not all victories need an audience to be meaningful. The young woman nodded thoughtfully and moved on. I watched her go, reflecting on my own journey from shadows into reluctant spotlight. This morning, as I prepared for my weekly dinner with Raphael and Leanne, now a regular fixture in our lives, I received a small package. Inside was a framed newspaper clipping, the original Silicon Valley Mercury News article from 1988 that mentioned Richard and me purchasing our first commercial property. Helen had found it in her archives and had it professionally framed. The attached note read, "To remind you where it all began, before the documentary, before Isadora, before everything. Just you and Richard seeing possibilities others missed. Love, Helen." I placed the frame on my mantel beside a photo of Richard and me on our wedding day. So young, so unaware of what lay ahead, the challenges and triumphs, the loss and resilience, the quiet building of an empire that would one day emerge from the shadows. The doorbell rang. Raphael and Leanne arriving for dinner. As I moved to answer it, I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. Still the same Selena Varon. Still preferring simple clothes and a modest home, still valuing substance over appearance. But something had shifted, both in how the world saw me and how I presented myself to it. There was a straightness to my shoulders that hadn't been there before, a directness in my gaze, the bearing of a woman who no longer needed to be underestimated to feel secure in her power. Stop acting important, Isadora had mocked that night at my dinner table, unaware that importance had never been my goal. Power had, security had, the ability to protect what I valued had. I opened the door to greet my son and his new partner, welcoming them into my deliberately modest home with its multi-million-dollar view of the life I had chosen, on my own terms, with clear eyes and no apologies. In the end, that was the real fortune I had built, not the millions in my accounts, but the freedom to live authentically, even when that meant stepping out of the shadows and into the light. If you enjoyed my story of how I taught my arrogant daughter-in-law an unforgettable lesson, share in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more stories of underestimated women who turned the tables. Never judge a book by its cover, especially when that book has $60 million hidden inside.